You have handled everything that came at you. That's not an exaggeration because you've built the business. You held it together when things went sideways. You showed up when no one else was going to, even when it was inconvenient, when you were exhausted, and when you had given more of yourself than you had to give. And that identity, the woman who handles all the things, it feels good. It's earned. Makes you feel important and worthy and accomplished, and understandably so. But now, that handle all the things identity is exactly what's making this phase harder. Because the same strategy that has kept everything going and built everything that you have has also been borrowing from the future you. And now you're starting to feel the physical and mental lack of reserves. And today I'm going to show you how I help my clients and myself stop borrowing against our future capacity and support ourselves right now, even with the hormonal shift of menopause, so we don't have to steal from what we need in the future. Welcome to the Frequency of Yes, the podcast for women leaders creating limitless success, deep empowerment, and divine wealth on their terms. I'm Kirsten Carey. I am obsessed with helping badass women feel good in their bodies so they can sustain wildly successful businesses without grinding or sacrificing themselves. The get it done identity, it's not arrogance. It's a functional adaptation built over decades of proving in real time that you could manage more volume and recover faster than most people around you. And it worked. And that's the point. You have evidence all around you that pushing through, even when you were exhausted, even when you knew you were giving more of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually than you should, would eventually pay off. The evidence is your business, your track record, your reputation, and the fact that everything and everyone around you kept going because of your involvement, even if you had to sacrifice yourself in the process. So you gave up sleep. You gave up proper nutrition and time with people that you loved, and you absolutely gave up your me time. But you justified it 18 different ways that it was the right thing to do, and you kept going. And what I have found is that many successful women don't even know when they're overgiving of themselves. It's just what they do. And for those of us growing up in the 70s, we didn't know what self-care was. You just sucked it up and you got it done, period. Putting your needs first wasn't even a thing then. It wasn't a thing. That pattern of getting shit done was a source of pride. It was something that many high achieving women celebrate about themselves, something that many of us lean into. And while we're doing it, it's not always obvious to us what we're giving up or what we're sacrificing because it wasn't directly impacting us negatively in that moment. And it was also nothing that some caffeine or a chocolate or a glass of wine couldn't fix. But now it's getting harder to keep it together, especially when our hormones are starting to shift. And suddenly it matters enormously now because our needs have changed. The resources are low and we don't know how to adjust. And the identity as the strong one or the one who handled all the things or the reliable one, it stops us from learning how to recognize when all of the things that got us here need to change in order to support us in this next level. So we double down, we work harder, we give more of ourselves because deep down, we know we're the common denominator. So we must be the problem, right? And as I continue to work with more and more women in this phase, I get to see the pattern of self-blame over and over. Because if you are the woman who is used to handling everything, then the answer to every problem is more you. But when that doesn't work, the next obvious step is to blame yourself for not being enough. And then the push through that worked in your 30s and maybe some of your 40s, it worked when the answer really was more effort. But now that you're in the matriarch phase, that strategy backfires. And the identity of being the strong one is the very thing making your efforts less effective because it's draining you more. So let me give you an example of how this identity manifests and turns against you, even with women who think they're doing enough self-care. So one of my clients, Mary, she's a badass. She's 47. She has her own multi-6-figure coaching business, and she's in a partnership for a multi-7-figure coaching business. She manages the sales team for that coaching company. She does training and coaching for their elite clients. And she also has a toddler. And she seems to have everything under control and is the grounding support for her clients, her teammates, her employees, her spouse, and her child. But she meditates and she eats healthy and she takes time for herself during the day to decompress. And she and her spouse take vacations. So she thought she was good to go. But she gets sick every single time there's a sales launch, which is several times a year. And at first it seemed like a coincidence. But then they realized it was definitely a pattern. And it actually even became a joke on the sales teams. Oh, we're having another launch. I guess Mary's going to get sick. And once she did get sick, it took her longer each time to fully recover. So a cough that used to clear in just a few days would now hang on for weeks. So I did an audit with her and I assessed everything going on for her physiologically, personally, and professionally. And I created a richly resourced strategic audit report for her. And I discovered that even though her diet looked healthy on the surface, it wasn't optimal to support her specifically. I also discovered that she was working against her natural flow in the way that she was blocking and booking her calendar. And based on some of her health history, there were several things in her environment that were working against her inherent weak points. And though she was actually getting everything done, she was using more effort, more time, and more resources overall than she really needed to. So when the launch events rolled around, she was out of reserves, making her vulnerable to getting sick. So we made some adjustments. We made adjustments to her diet. It was nothing dramatic, but specific tweaks that helped her stabilize her body and allow her immune system to build its strength back up so it could do its job of defending her and helping her heal. We also changed how she scheduled her day and what she did leading up to each launch so she felt more resourced going into the event as well as after. She also added a specific process that would support her lungs and detox pathways so she could eliminate pathogens and chemicals and hormones that her body didn't need. And we built up her gut health. And maybe, and probably most importantly, we altered her relationship around her push-through identity so that it would better serve her moving forward. And then she worked with me and Kismet. So Kismet, you may not know who Kismet is. Kismet's the custom AI agent that I create for each of my clients. And I created one from her or for her. So she worked with me in Kismet and she had conversations on a regular basis with Kismet. And she would update her symptoms and her experiences. And she would discuss hidden blocks based on her unique history and her backstory and her health and her childhood and her human design profile. And she was absolutely fascinated by what she was learning. And her spouse even reached out to me to tell me how much easier everyone's life was in the household since Kismet came to town. That's probably actually one of my favorite testimonials ever. Because when I see how a shift in a client is affecting their everyday people, their families, their team members, I get so excited because you see the ripple effect. And isn't that the whole point, right? Is that we don't just shift our lives, we have impact on everyone else's. And I just heard from Mary this morning, and she's just completed a launch that brought in revenue of over more than $600,000 in 3 days, with more still coming in. And get this, she didn't get sick, not even a sniffle. And even more interesting, her toddler got sick, was sick the whole time. She pulled off all of the things and she didn't get sick. So look, when you're used to pushing through no matter what, you become oblivious a lot of the times to the signs your body is giving that it needs more support or a different kind of support. And when your identity becomes tied to that push through, do it at all costs mentality, your body has to find different ways to get your attention. So it'll come at you with symptoms to let you know something isn't right. And over time, the body runs out of resources to support the push through approach. And then suddenly, though it's never sudden. But suddenly, as my clients all say when they first come to me, suddenly this happened. You get hit with an experience or a symptom or something that you can't ignore. And every time you ignore a symptom or don't even recognize it's there, the body has to borrow from your reserves. And when those reserves are depleted, it borrows against future reserves, just like taking money out of a savings account to pay for an extra expense, but then never putting the money back into the savings and continuing to borrow against it for the next expense and the next expense. And then eventually when the savings are all completely gone, if you aren't making enough money for your basic expenses, then you have to take out a loan to pay the regular bills. And at some point, that loan is going to have to be paid back. And if you don't have the money, you're going to have to give up some collateral like your car or your house. The body is the same way. If you keep borrowing against your reserves, eventually you're going to have to borrow against your future health. And that looks like brittle bones and heart disease and joint pain and memory loss. It impacts more than just your body, too. It's going to impact your ability to lead effectively, to keep up with the needs of your clients, and to stay relevant in this ever-changing business landscape. And all of those things, all of them, can be prevented if you continue to stay fully resourced in this now moment and stop borrowing against your future self. An underfunded reserve account doesn't just announce itself. It shows up in things like your decisions and your ability to recover quickly and the excitement that fuels your work. Decisions that used to be quick get dragged out or pushed off because your cognitive system has to work harder to reach the same clarity. So processing is slower and confidence is lower, and your bounce back time much longer. So a hard week followed by a strong Monday has become a hard week followed by a hard week. And even if you're keeping your performance up, it just takes more out of you. And over time, this extra pushing kicks off more of a fear response, a fight or flight response in your system, which impacts cortisol levels, memory, weight, anxiety. So you toss in a drop in hormones in perimenopause or menopause, and it's the perfect storm of chaos all running underneath the surface. What's even more fun is when the I can handle it identity takes over, it can also stop you from asking for help. Because women who are the go-to for supporting everyone else often don't know how to ask for help. And even when they're desperate for it, they don't even know how to receive it. And they don't know who to go to get the support that they really need. And I get that. That's why I created the Richly Resourced program the way that I did. It's to help the women who fall into this identity trap and need strong support that helps them continue to do what they do with the adjustments and tweaks they need specifically to replenish themselves and their businesses. Because look, you didn't fall into this resource debt because you're weak. It's actually the exact opposite. You ended up here because you are strong in a specific and highly effective way. You borrowed against future reserves because the return on borrowing helped you to build and get things done, and that investment paid off. And now that someday is here, and that borrowed resource is due. And this is a perfect balance sheet moment. So let's pull it apart strategically with a couple of questions. Where are you overpaying and taking out more for the same or less results? What reserves need attention immediately, and what areas are close to total depletion? And how do you get a solid foundation so you stop borrowing against your future self? Now, I don't want you to answer these right now. I just want them to sit with you because I'm going to show you an abridged version of a process I use with my clients and with myself to access innate wisdom that's often blocked because of old conditioning or false beliefs and identity. It's simple, but it's incredibly profound. So do this with me. Close your eyes. If you're driving, of course, don't do this, but close your eyes and just get settled into your body. And I want you to breathe in through your nose. When you reach the top of your breath, I want you to hold the breath just for a moment and then open up your mouth and exhale. Release that breath. I'm going to do this 2 more times. Breathe in through your nose. When you reach the top of your breath, I want you to hold that breath just for a moment. And then when you're ready, I want you to open up your mouth and release the breath. 1 more time. In through your nose, top of your breath, hold on to it for a moment. And this time, when you open up your mouth and you release the breath, I want you to exhale as far as you can go. And then 1 more little breath out. So you're as exhaled as you can be. Then you can return to your normal breathing. Keep your eyes closed. I want you to pick a decision that you've been circling, something specific. And it doesn't have to be a giant decision. In fact, a littler decision is fine for this. Maybe it's a pricing change. for maybe someone that you were thinking of hiring or opening up on your team, or an offer you're thinking about retiring, or one that's a new one that you want to bring in to the fold. Maybe it's a boundary with a client that you haven't set yet, or maybe you've set it and you haven't held it yet. But something that you've been pushing off or trying to figure out that you really don't have any real resolution on. All right, so just let whatever that is come into the space for you and just choose something and choose whatever shows up first. Don't overthink this one. Now, I want you to jump ahead 5 years to your future self, the 5-year older version of you who has all of the answers because she's already made the decision that you've been thinking about and has all of the things that you wanted to come from that decision. She's now looking back at the version of you in this moment, and she has all of the confidence of knowing how her decision played out. She knows what happened after she decided. She knows the steps she took to get to where she is. And she also knows exactly why you're stuck in the decision you're stuck in right now. She knows you even better than you do right now because she's the wiser, more experienced version of you with 20/20 hindsight. So I want you to breathe into her, allow her to surface, and then ask her, what should I do about this decision? And let her speak. Receive her wisdom. What does she tell you to do? Typically, the answer, it's light, it's clear for most of the people doing this. And most of them, it's often quick. Now, if it's not quick for you, that's fine. But a common thing that I hear from women doing this exercise is that when they listen to their future self, they really allowed her to show up. They always benefited by taking quick action on the decision she let them make or she told them to make. And the present self tends to focus more on the risks associated with taking action. The future self has the ability to see the cost of staying still and not making any decision. The future version of you who knows all of the things, so you don't have to pretend with her or be anything other than who you already are. All you have to do is be quiet and listen to her. And when the answer comes, let it be whatever it is. And then take action on it immediately. Now, this was an abridged version of a much longer process that I use with my clients. But as you do it over and over, it starts to get quicker. And I use the same strategy every time I need to make a choice because it's the little choices, not the big ones, that make the real differences, because the little choices are the ones that inform the big decisions. And it's not just who you choose to hire or how to invest your money. The micro choices are the ones that create the foundation and support, the evidence your subconscious is looking for and uses to make the next choice and the next one. They're the ones that create our identity or send us into an identity crisis. For example, a micro choice is choosing to do one more rep at the gym, because lifting the weight one more time might be the one that's the tipping point that creates the support your bones need so that if you fall, the bone stays intact. And every time I make a micro choice, I imagine it as a gift I'm giving my future self who benefits from that micro choice that I'm making in the now moment. Every single micro choice on its own has no impact overall, but hundreds of those micro choices all added up inform our identity of who we are. And that impacts our bigger choices, and they create your life experience and outcomes. So every time I pick up a weight at the gym, every time I make a meal for myself that truly nourishes me, every time I take a break when I feel like I just have to push through, every time I support my nervous system instead of pushing through the dysregulation, I'm writing a virtual love letter to my 80-year-old self, because she's the one that's going to receive it in how her body moves and what she can still do, in what she can still remember, in what she can still enjoy, and the kind of life she gets to have because I chose more leafy greens today, or better sleep, and an extra set of squats instead of something easier. So here's what matters. Most of the decisions we make in this phase are not being made from our future self. They're being made from our past self, the version of us that got hurt, who got conditioned into believing things about what we had to do to be loved or safe or seen, or the version of us who learned to override her own signals to keep the peace. That version of you is still running a lot of your decisions. So when you choose a glass of wine because it's been a hard day, that's often the past self asking for the wine. When you skip the workout because you stayed up too late the night before, that's often the past self who's saying, just hit the snooze button. And when you push through the exhaustion because you have to prove something, that's often our past self who wants to be seen and loved and heard. The work of this phase is moving the decision-making authority out of the past and into the future, letting the woman who is waiting for you to tell you how to behave, what to do, how to act, to write the script moving forward. Choosing behaviors that are love letters to her, not coping mechanisms for the version of you still trying to fill a void. Because this isn't a discipline problem. This isn't a work harder problem. This is a question of who's making the decisions. Because you didn't get here by being the weak one. You got here because you were willing to do the things that most people would not. And that will always be true. The version of strength needed in the matriarch phase is more sophisticated. It's the strength to stop borrowing against our future self, to look at what's going on with clear eyes, to ask the woman 5 years from now what we should do today, and to believe her when she tells you, to take action, to send love letters forward instead of sending coping mechanisms in circles. From here forward, the conversation on this podcast is going to shift to what a redesign looks like in real time. The specifics, the structure, the numbers. The loan you borrowed against your future reserves has come due. And it's time to adjust, pay it back, and start supporting your current self and your future self rather than borrowing from her. And if you want to know where your reserves stand right now, that's the work that I do with the Richly Resourced Audit and Kismet. It looks at your physiology, your nervous system, your business structure, and your energy as a complete picture. And you can find more details at evolveminded.com/audit. I will see you on the next episode.